Cameras on? You got a pen? Good evening, and welcome to the council meeting the 29th of April 2019. We are using Facebook live streaming on Facebook Live, and there is no live interaction, but you may leave comments, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. We will be voting by electronic ballot on all matters except administrative. Please do not vote prior to the display of members. When the vote is input, the name of the member will change shading indicating that a member has voted. The vote may be changed any time throughout the voting period. Select yes for green, or green for yes, red for no. You may select yellow to abstain, but your vote will be counted as a negative vote. The chair will be calling voting closed and the secretary will close the voting, displaying the results. The chair will then report the outcome of the vote. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before this meeting commences? CEO Phillips, could you please take the roll call?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have full attendance of council here this evening, plus myself, Solicitor Matart, and Recording Secretary Jennifer West.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have before you the approved agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? We could have a motion. Thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. You have before you the minutes of the 25th of March 2019 council meeting have been distributed. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? If it's no errors, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are errors, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red and the annotated minutes will be added to the electronic meeting file as approved. Are there any errors? All right, no errors. Moving on. Thank you. Our first unfinished business is the Nova Scotia Power property easement. CEO Phillips, do we have any furtherance on that?
Nothing to report at this time, Your Worship.
Excellent, thank you. And that will remain on our unfinished business until we get something on there. So our recommendations arising from our CAC meeting will be presented and moved by Councillor Lynn Pulsifer.
Your Worship, do you miss presentations?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't have that on my sequence of events. Okay, so we should have zigged when I zagged.
All good.
All right, so we had approval of the minutes. We've already done unfinished business, so we'll go back to item number 4, presentations. So if the Kentville Historical Society could make their presentation. And the mic is on.
Thank you.
And if you need the light, it's right there for you.
I'm fine. I just need my glasses, as one does. All right. So I'm here tonight really to reintroduce an idea that was originally brought before council with request for the use of the VIA station for the Kentville Heritage Centre. And at that time, there was some discussion about a small pocket park adjacent to that location for the museum. I think it's pretty evident that a need for downtown green space exists, and this little park, the proposed location is here at the entrance to this parking lot, so it would take this entrance out of service and give the town better control of traffic through Station Way there. And the role of this little park is that it will be a display space for our community storyboards, but it will also provide a really nice setting for the Heritage Centre. It will provide a park for residents who live in or near the downtown core. It's a really short walk from King's Riverside Court to here, and we know that the residents there are yearning for a green space that they can easily access and spend time in on summer days. It would also be a really nice place to wait for the bus and provide a quiet place to escape the stress of court activity for those who come to town for that reason. So we have a couple of ideas of how it could go. It could either be something with a more formal layout like this, with pads where you would read the storyboards from the walkway, or it could be a more informal layout where the path goes from the sidewalk and the narrow path goes into the parking lot and the broader path goes on and links to take you to view the murals, the historic murals that are there downtown. And you can see the placement of storyboards in the beds there. So we're thinking, you know, that potentially it could look something like this. So small, but a big visual impact, I think, in that space. So the idea is to have small trees that provide an overhead shade canopy, and that the planting areas be filled with ground cover perennials, and that the pathways all be completely accessible for wheelchair users or kids on trikes or whoever happens to find themselves there. And the planting areas will be raised berms to provide good root zone for the plants there. And we may use little retaining walls or not, depending what the outcome of consultation with staff is. So it would be really nice to have a place to just sit and relax downtown. And if you're going to provide good pedestrian space, if they're walking from one side of town to the other, it'd be really nice for them to be able to go through there. And again, King's Riverside Court, they tend to stay inside. And in conversations that we've had with them, they would like to be outside if they had a place to be. It's a quieter street than the one that their building is located on. And I think the green space would be really nice for them. And the construction would be in keeping with the healthcare and therapeutic design standards of the American Association of Landscape Architects. So we're not here really asking for funding. What we're asking for is simply permission. And this pocket park is a dream that we had that goes with the dream of the Heritage Center. I, for one, am really excited for an opportunity to have a project to work with town staff. And I haven't had many opportunities to do that since I came to Kentville. So I hope you would agree that this project would benefit the downtown. And I'd like to thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
If you would stay and
Yeah.
entertain some questions, are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Bolland.
Oh, thank you, Worship. I like the concept, but again, a few questions, and maybe you don't have the answers for us. But
Yeah.
Any estimate of cost, and where do you see that ask coming? Obviously,
The ask wouldn't be to the town.
Okay.
The ask would be for from other funding bodies and foundations and citizens. And so I think, you know, my hope is that it would be like a gift to the town. Yeah.
and another question is, we've got an active transportation study that we're looking at as well, so that maybe should be looked at with those lens on,
Yeah.
you know, to make it biker friendly. It could be
Yeah.
a destination for cyclists coming through.
Yeah.
Either off the main track that we look at, or but it could be a destination spot.
Yeah.
And
So yeah,
last question may
definitely
be
work with staff.
yeah, and the last question may be more for staff, but do we own the land they're looking at, or the county, or both?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
We do. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank
That
you
was
very
too
much.
easy.
Oh, just wait, no, there it is. Councillor Pulsford, please.
Thank you. A great presentation, Carol.
Thanks.
I just wanted to inquire as to whether you considered like a partnership at all with NSCC, their horticultural
Yeah.
division for
Yeah.
manpower or whatever?
Yeah. I taught landscape horticulture at the Nova Scotia Agricultural College and Dalhousie University for 26 years, and I'm tied very closely to what goes on at King's Tech. And they are very keen to be involved in more things with the town, and I think it's a really good chance to sort of open that partnership and that link to bring them into things. So I'm really, it's my latent teacher is sort of hoping that I get to do this one.
And your past experience has been with design landscaping? Has
Yeah,
that been?
I served on
your-
4 committees for the town of Truro.
Okay,
Over about
yes.
a 22-year period.
Okay.
So I was one of the originators and chaired the Community in Bloom Committee. I was on the Truro Tree Committee, and that was urban tree management and green space management deal there. I taught landscape design for 25 years, and I developed and began the landscape architecture program at Dow. So,
Right.
yeah, it's a fun project. I hope I get to do it.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Andrew.
Oh, I just so you know, it's not. We've had some discussion about this, and I think to Councillor Bolland's comment that we have the active transportation portion. So just so you didn't walk away feeling like, wow, they're really disengaged. I think we all have had chat and discussion around this. I think they're just that there's other things happening that
Yeah.
that potentially could fit perfectly with
Well,
what
I'm
you're
willing to
talking
wait
about.
until this all gets tied in
Yeah.
together, as long as it happens.
Yeah, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Thanks for your presentation. I'm just wondering if the funds that you raise would also cover what the cost would be for the site prep. For
Yes.
example, so any piping, so all of that would be
That's all
covered
been
as well?
considered,
Okay.
yeah.
So do you have an estimate or anything like that yet as to the cost of this?
Well, we're probably looking at, for seating and everything, we're probably looking at about 40,000,
All told?
all told.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Carol.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thanks, Carol. In looking at the active transportation documents and so on that were presented last week, I believe it was, this park wouldn't be in the way. It certainly would be beside an active transportation lane.
Nice.
And so it definitely would blend in nicely with that. I have just a question for the chair. I'm wondering if it's necessary to have our presenter wait all the way through for us to cover everything else, and I'm wondering if we could speed that up. If we could do this now instead of waiting till the end of our agenda here to new business.
That's, when you say speed it up,
Well, I mean, if we could do the vote now and do a decision now rather than have her wait all
so
the
what
way
would your
through.
decision, what are you making a motion? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, I guess if I could make a motion and we could deal with this now, that would be, if that's appropriate, then I would like to do that.
Well, I mean, it's council's prerogative with respect to agenda items, so I'd suggest if you're wanting to discuss it in advance, then you should make the motion to change the agenda to discuss it earlier, and then you could get into discussion and debate and maybe a decision-making. But I think the first step is to essentially amend the agenda to accelerate discussion if that's what council wants to do. There's certainly an option for you to consider.
Well, I'll make a motion to amend the agenda and see if council agrees with me or not.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the agenda and move this to item number 5.
Yes.
Move our new business to item number 5.
Yes.
So we have a motion that has been moved and seconded to amend the agenda and move our new business to item number 5. I have some lights on. Councillor Ballin, your light is on, no, sorry, Councillor Gerard.
Yeah.
So did
I just have a quick,
did you want to speak to this amendment on the agenda?
no, I love the idea,
No, do you want to speak to we have a motion. Do you want to speak to the motion?
no.
Okay. We have a motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. My only concern with doing that is that we don't normally do it for other folks that present. We have our presentations early on, and then, I mean, I can think of a number of societies and individuals that wait. That's my only concern, is that we typically don't do that, and I just have some concern around us doing it in special circumstances. So
Okay.
unless there's a special circumstance, Councillor Maxwell.
Okay, thank you. Please wait. Councillor Bolland? Or, sorry, Councillor Gerard.
Thank you.
I-
I would like to speak on the motion.
Okay.
I love the idea and I support it, but I think I'd really like to have more information, and I don't know whether that's, like, when we were going to discuss new business, were we going to say, yes, we want to do this? I'd like to see what it's going to look like and that type of thing before I say, as I said, I support it, but we're short on information in my view.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell?
Can I go through the chair to Councillor Gerard?
No,
No?
no.
Okay, well, Councillor Savage asked me,
Deputy Mayor.
our deputy mayor asked me if there was a special consideration. I don't have a special consideration. I just think that perhaps, having people wait all the way through our reports and everything else makes it a bit long. And I know that our presenter runs her own business and is often busy in the evenings. And I just thought that this is something that we always have the right to change the agenda and consider moving things around. And I just felt tonight that this was an opportunity to maybe make it a bit easier on this presenter. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion that has been moved and seconded to amend the agenda to move new business to item number 5. Is there any further discussion? As this is administrative, we will vote we will vote not using the electronic devices. So all those in favor of amending the agenda? All those in favor? All those opposed to amending the agenda? And the noes have it. So the agenda will remain as approved originally. Thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you.
No,
No?
that's great, thank you.
All right, so our recommendations arising from the CAC meeting
Oh, sorry, that was me.
will be presented and moved by Councillor Pulsifer. Let me get there, you're on.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Your Worship. The first recommendation is withdraw from capital reserve, draw number 3. At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Director Kroll presented the report recommending a withdrawal of $56,125.43 from the capital reserve general allocation to fund upgrades to the Visitor Information Center, the Gorge to support Canada Cup, and administrative projects. Council Advisory Committee recommended that Council approve the attached resolution for a withdrawal of $56,125.43 from the Town of Kentville Capital Reserve General Allocation to partially fund several capital acquisitions as listed during the year 2018-2019. I so move.
Second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that council approve the resolution for withdrawal of $56,125.43 from the Town of Kentville Capital Reserve General Allocation to partially fund several capital acquisitions as denoted in the report for expenses in the year 2018-2019. Is there any discussion? Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay, the second is debenture pre-approval, and this will be for information only, and I'll first read down at the bottom of the page. Approved during the special meeting of council on April the 8th, following the April Council Advisory Committee meeting. So you want me to read the full thing? At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of the Council Advisory Committee, Deborah Kroll presented the report outlining the debenture funds, which will be issued this spring by the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation in the amount of $731,400. Council Advisory Committee recommended that Council approve the resolution TBR-18/19-01 for pre-approval of debenture issuance in the amount of $731,400 and forwarded to a special council meeting for ratification. And further, after ratification, it be forwarded to the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation to complete the town's debenture issue for spring 2019.
Thank you.
Item number 3, recommendation regarding the Crescent Avenue property, Glooscap Curling Club. At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Director Gentleman presented her report on the request from the Glooscap Curling Club regarding a portion of their parking lot and entrance which is on town property. Council Advisory Committee recommended that Council direct staff to move forward with closing a portion of Crescent Avenue and deed it to the Glooscap Curling Club for the sum of $1. And further, that Glooscap Curling Club pay the first $5,000, with the town assuming additional costs up to $5,000. And further, that Glooscap Curling Club solicit donations of services from membership to support this transaction. I so move.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the council direct staff to move forward to closing a portion of Crescent Avenue and deed it to Glooscap Curling Club for the sum of $1, and further that Glooscap Curling Club pay the first $5,000 with the town assuming additional costs up to $5,000, and further that Glooscap Curling Club solicit donations of service from membership to support this transaction. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the question? Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. The motion is carried. Thank you.
A recommendation regarding the smoking bylaw revision. At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Chief Giacchetto presented her report on the recommendations provided by the Kentville Police Commission regarding Kentville's Smoke-Free Public Places Act. The changes include wording that reflects the national legislation around cannabis. Council Advisory Committee recommended. It is recommended that the council give first reading to Chapter 99, Smoke-Free Public Places Bylaw, with expanded definitions covering cannabis, public places, smoking, and vaping or other methods of inhalation. And further, that council rescind Chapter 84, Smoke-Free Public Places, upon adoption of Chapter 99. I so move.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just before the vote on this, Your Worship,
Certainly.
just to remind council that this is first reading. This is a bylaw, so it takes 2 readings, so this is first reading.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council give first reading to the Chapter 99 Smoke-Free Public Places Bylaw with expanded definitions covering cannabis, public places, smoking and vaping, or other methods of inhalation, and further that council rescind Chapter 84 Smoke-Free Public Places upon the adoption of Chapter 99 Smoke-Free Public Places Bylaw. Is there any discussion? Question? Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Motion is carried. Thank you.
Recommendation regarding the hardware gallery lease extension. At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Mayor Snow reviewed the support to date provided to the gallery from Council and outlined the organization's request. The gallery requested an extension to their lease that would allow them to remain in the Cochin building to the end of September 2019, despite it being for sale. Council Advisory Committee recommended that staff negotiate a lease extension with the hardware gallery to the end of September 2019. I so move.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the council direct staff to negotiate a lease extension with the hardware gallery to the end of September 2019. Is there any discussion? Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Motion is carried with one negative, and that being the chair.
Recommendation to council regarding the LUB amendments. At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Zach Best, Development Coordinator with the Kentville Business Community, gave a presentation about recent activities, member survey around signage, and the annual financial status of the organization. KBC has 3 suggestions for council and staff to consider around signage in the land use bylaw. Council Advisory Committee recommended that council send the recommendations to amend the land use bylaw around signage to staff for review. Staff encourages council to consider tabling this recommendation as staff and KBC are meeting and discussing this issue together.
Your Worship, if I could just speak to that.
Certainly.
I think as we revisit the motion, the second part is potentially not necessary for your
Okay.
consideration. It's probably more of an update than it is a request to table, because all you're doing through the motion is sending it to us to come back to you with revised language if it's warranted. The note explains that KBC and staff have been talking, and KBC, not that they've said no, they've said as a group, let's figure this thing out a little bit more than the straight amendments that they had requested. So I don't see any break in the decision-making for council. There's still momentum towards that. Staff will just work on what the amendments will be for your consideration. So I think you could proceed with the recommendation as suggested. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we have, the motion has been moved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council send the recommendation to amend the LUB around signage to staff for review. Is there any further discussion? Ready for the question?
Question?
Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay, the last recommendation to council is regarding the Student Bursary Council appointment. At the April 8th, 2019 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Mayor Snow reviewed the selection committee that supports Policy Statement G18, Student Bursary. Councillor Maxwell has been appointed to this committee in 2017 and 2018 and is interested in continuing this work. Council Advisory Committee recommended that Councillor Maxwell be appointed to the Student Bursary Selection Committee for 2019 and 2020. I so move.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Councillor Maxwell be appointed to the Student Bursary Selection Committee for 2019-2020. Is there any discussion? Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pulsifer. All right, we're moving on to our reports. Reports will be added to the public record under a single motion at the end of presentations, and we'll start with Councillor Gerard, please.
Thank you, Worship.
No,
Okay.
just give me a second.
Oh, see, I turned it around this time. I figured we'd go by seating instead
Oh,
of...
yeah, I can
I'm good to go. I'll wait.
Zigman, we should have zagged. You can go ahead, Councillor Gerard.
Okay, perfect.
You've got your
Thank you.
report.
Yep, I was away for part of the month, so it's brief. March 28th, Joint Fire Services. I still have a lot of questions to address to the fire department about budgets. I attended, April 12th, I attended a strategic planning session. April 16th, budget lunch and learn, which I learned quite a bit, oddly enough, about the federal budget. April 23rd, the active transportation plan, and the 24th, the needs assessment. What I'll say about both of these is the amount of money that we spend on studies, in my mind, is or at least on these studies, was not warranted. Much of what the active transportation plan brought to the table was discussed in several stakeholder and community meetings that we had, and the needs assessment. I found absolutely no benefit to that whatsoever after attending that. I really think that in the future we should be very careful on where we spend our money for surveys and studies. And that is my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bolland.
Attended a Valley Waste Management meeting on April 8th, and there'll be some further on that later. April 17th, the same as well. March 27th, the Kentville Leadership Tea, a pleasant, well-attended evening with Miriam Braithwaite. I hope I pronounced that right, Miriam. Incoming leadership candidate as well as outgoing leadership candidate Catherine Waterbury. Best of luck to her. Volunteer Recognition Awards brunch on April 6th. Attended that and enjoyed a nice event to celebrate our numerous town volunteers. April 10th, budget learning session number 2. Again, a further review of the upcoming budget with staff and some good interaction. April 24th, Kings Regional Recreation Assessment, an overview for Kings County Municipal Councilors and staff of 31 recommendations based on surveys, interviews, etc., in such areas as funding and governance, climate change, and more. Back to Valley Waste, we had an in-camera meeting for board members and CAOs in Berwick on the 8th. Excuse me. And on the 17th, we had a board meeting attended by CEOs as well at the Old Orchard Inn. There was a presentation by the municipality of the District of Chester regarding Kaiser Metal landfills past and upcoming fiscal year financials, updates from them on the sustain agreement and their associated business plan, and then the regular monthly reports from staff and approval of past minutes. And Andrew Garrett was recognized for 20 years service to Valley Waste Management. And thank you to Deputy Mayor Savage and CEO Phillips for attending. And that's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pulsfer.
Thank you. Date of last council meeting attended was March 25th, and last CAC meeting was April the 8th. March 26th, I attended the Kings Point to Point meeting. A brief synopsis of this discussion took place re the poverty grant funding from the government, and it was noted that approximately 80 to 100 people use this grant. 2018 to 19 has been a very successful year for Kings Point to Point, and this year, once again, the board is requesting a standard funding increase of 2%, which is consistent with the request from the other 3 municipal partners. March 29th, attended the Recreation Committee meeting. April 8th, 10th, and 11th, attended 3 budget lunch and learn meetings. We attended with the directors to review budgeting process for the different departments. April 18th, I attended the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board meeting, and I'll go into more detail later on that. April the 12th, strategic planning session. Priorities for short and long-term strategic planning were submitted by all present. Event attendance, April 27th, I also attended the Leadership Candidate Tea, and it was a lovely evening, and we had a chance to meet our new candidate, Miriam Brathwaite, and her child attendant as well, Chloe Stacy, and we heard outgoing remarks from our past candidate, Catherine Waterbury. It was a lovely evening. April the 1st, I attended Adult Learners Week celebration at the put on by Literacy Nova Scotia at the Halifax Central Library. 4 speakers spoke on their journey to finding confidence and success with reading and writing through LNS. Since 1992, Literacy Nova Scotia has supported the literacy community in the province by working to ensure all Nova Scotians have equal access to quality literacy, essential skills, and lifelong learning opportunities. April the 6th, I attended the Volunteer Recognition Awards and brunch. Awards were presented to 22 deserving volunteers, and Kentville's Provincial Volunteer Award went to Nancy Belleville from the Glooscap Curling Club. April the 12th, I attended the home show at the Kentville Arena and took part in a cake cutting ceremony sponsored by Donna Conrad /Remax, celebrating her years of participation in the home show. Thanks to Donna and Jason's Independent, and especially to the organizer of the home show each year, Kevin Bennett and his staff, for a successful event. This is a little bit more detail regarding the library board meeting, which was on April the 11th. We had discussion with regards to various committee reports, bylaw reviews, and the new funding formula to be implemented in 2020 for libraries across the province. AVRL has the lowest per capita funding in the province and is requesting the review of the funding formula begin in year 3 of the formula and not year 5. New projects on the go. Advocacy Committee report includes One Card Nova Scotia, whereby it will change the way resources are shared. Members of the libraries will be able to borrow anything, anywhere in Nova Scotia libraries. There are unique initiatives such as book bikes, newbie fit kits, innovation labs at Annapolis Royal and Wolfville, and Berwick has received funding for gym passes to be used at the new gym located in the Mutual Centre. I believe it's 5 passes that you can receive from the Berwick Library to go try the gym out. This year, board members will be advocating as to, quote, why your library is the most important place in town, end of quote. Just an update, the Kentville Library now has an automatic door opener installed at the door opening into the library. I made an error on that original reporting there. So it makes for a much more accessible entry, and I went over this afternoon and tried the different pushes, and it's lovely. Those doors were very heavy going into the library, and some of these seniors were having trouble pulling it open. So this is a nice addition. And Kentville, of course, remains one of the libraries with the highest circulation in the valley. Under miscellaneous events, on April the 4th, I attended a public presentations afternoon at Acadia and heard 4 students from the history department give presentations on public history topics. Of particular interest was a young woman, Emily Ellis, who spoke on memories of Kentville as it was, as it is, which was a result of the interviews by the students of 15 longtime Kentville residents who participated in the oral history project that was implemented by the Kentville Historical Society in late 2018. April 9th, I attended a meeting of the Kentville Historical Society to hear the speaker for the evening, Tom Cocken, talk about the history of the Cocken family and the influence they had on the growth of Kentville over the years. That's my report.
Thank you.
Your Worship, if I could
Certainly.
just, Lynn, the poverty grant for Point to Point and Jennifer, is that something that we've communicated or something that we could or should?
Sorry?
The poverty grant for folks under Point to Point?
No, it's
not?
funding from the government that
Okay,
comes in.
for Point to Point
Yes.
versus citizens that are looking for
Yes,
support.
there are deserving citizens that need to have that particular funding, and the government does provide
Okay.
that for a certain number, and has over the years. There's a possibility that that funding may not continue another year, but that's just kind of up in the air right now, so.
Okay. All right.
But it's a well-used service for those that need to have that funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Andrew.
All right, so apparently I didn't send Jennifer everything, but just a couple of comments. I was on, I guess, light duties or whatever you want to call it, the last month or so, and remain such, but it didn't really affect my attendance in most things, and there were a few other things I attended that are not on that list. With regard to King's Transit Authority, I guess the highlight for us right now on the authority is that an MOU has been signed with Acadia Student Union with regard to UPass. Pending a vote this fall, we could be on the cusp of some very good news for King's Transit Authority, which is great timing. And with regard to Joint Fire Service, we recently received a letter from Chief Deloge, and he recently communicated some deficiencies that he perceived with the funding model used by the respective partners, that would be the town of Kentville and Kings County. There appears to be warranted concerns that will need to be discussed further amongst the Joint Fire Service Committee before being brought further to this council. The only other thing is the active transportation. While pleased with the outcome, it'd be great to see us explore, and I don't know if this has been done before, but explore the idea of internally developed concepts and data collection versus external research. It seems there have been a few times when there's work that's been accumulated that maybe we could have done, and I recall not only did as Councillor Gerard say, discuss some of the outcomes that we saw through the research. The Trails Coalition themselves actually made a recommendation at some point that was precisely at least what part of that showed us. So it's hard to not kind of question the money spent on research in that kind of case. So autism flag raising was great, and the mostly young people that would have been there identified as autistic, they were really excited, and it was just great to be a part of that. And that's my report.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are we allowed to pose a question?
Sure.
Just about the joint fire services discrepancies, or are you relating to the budget in terms of what the counties approved and or not approved? Is that what you mean, or what? I'm just wondering if you could be more specific.
Okay,
if that's okay.
I can be. I don't know if the communication with Chief Deloge, he's definitely exercised some he's worked really hard to, I think, tighten things up as much as possible, and to there's some projects and things that just had been on the docket for a long time that are gone. But what his concern is that the arrangement that based on percentages, for example, the town of Kentville, we take a lead from the county of Kings, so they have a percentage based on numbers, based on population, that they pay, and then we pay based on that percentage. Well, what he's citing is the fact that they're falling behind a couple of percentage points every year for the last 5 years. So I think it's something we need to venture into. And I don't know. I haven't gone through those details.
A little bit to it.
Yeah.
I think it was directed more towards the county, and I'll just be straightforward that their level of scrutiny over the Kentville Fire Service is, in the chief's opinion, not the same level of scrutiny and accountability that they apply to other fire services, such as financial records. As noted in his correspondence or in the past, the county does not require the same feedback, information, financial records from the other services in which they provide funding to. So I think there's always room for improvement in our environment, but I think it was more directed to the county, hey, why aren't you doing with the other services what you're doing with Kentville?
I'm glad you said it.
Something like that, okay?
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah,
All right.
okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you
Okay.
very much. Oh, my apologies.
Go ahead.
So we know you cancel all the other meetings, council and CIC. So April 10th was the Investment Advisory Committee where we reviewed the reports and recommendations from our investment advisor, and the portfolio value is just north of 13 million. April 15th, I attended the REMO meeting where a motion was made to approve the VPR under the REMO proposal, which is Vulnerable Persons Registry. There were MOU agreements discussed with Kings County, Annapolis County, Kings REMO training, and a community outreach update. April the 17th, Valley Waste Board meeting, and Councillor Ballin, who sits on that board, who just explained it before, because the majority of my attendance included an in-camera session. March the 27th, I attended the leadership tea and brought greetings on behalf of Mayor Snow to our outgoing leadership candidate, Catherine Waterbury, who represented town of Kentville very well, and our incoming candidate, Miriam Brathwaite. And so it was great event organized by our own Ashley and Rachel, and they did a spectacular job. The fire hall looked amazing. I was very proud to be there. Diversity Kings was April the 1st, where we had a guest presentation from Sabrina Whitman, who is a senior policy analyst with the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It was a very, very good, excellent presentation. We discussed our work plan review with a view to having each member work on a separate area. Policy review, enhance the relationship with Chamber of Commerce, diversity in art, etc., etc. April 1st, I attended the Provincial Volunteer Awards at the Casino Nova Scotia, attended in honor of Kentville's recipient, Nancy Bellevaux. I know she's the province's recipient, but she's from Glooscap. Lunch and Learn to review the line items in the budget for the 2019-2020 budget. Strat plan session, we reviewed long-term priorities for council and staff. I attended the AT Active Transportation Report conducted by Uplands. And on the 24th, the Recreational Needs Assessment presentation and a report to follow upon receipt of the paper-based. And good ideas, however, same directs us back to a regional paradigm. That is my report.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell?
Yes. March 29th, I attended the Kentville Parks and Recreation meeting, and I will do a report on that a little bit later in my presentation. April 16th, I also attended the KCA PTA, and I will do a report on that a little bit later. Kentville events, April 6th, Kentville Volunteer Recognition Awards and Brunch. We've heard about that, a wonderful ceremony where many of our volunteers throughout the town, serving with various organizations, were presented with certificates of appreciation. I attended all 3 budget learning sessions, and we went through the 2018 budget and to see how the capital and operating budgets were set up, and our finance chair did a great job there. Strategic planning session, I also attended that on April the 12th. At the same time, I also popped over to the Kentville Home Show and the RE/MAX cake cutting celebration. Many thanks to Donna Conrad and her RE/MAX team for celebrating many years with the Home Show in Kentville. Also, kudos to Kevin Bennett and his crew for hosting another exceptional home show this year. I attended the Active Transportation Plan set up by Upland, and where they went through the plan for council with suggestions on how to connect all the areas of town, not just the trail, the Harvest Moon Trail, but all the different areas of town, and connecting them so that it will be safe to walk, wheel, and use our own power to get from point A to point B. April 24th, I attended the Recreational Needs Assessment presentation. The company putting together the results of the needs assessment went through the results of the various surveys and interviews and so on. They also asked for feedback on the preliminary 31 recommendations that they had made. I believe that, I would also like to see studies reduced a bit, but in asking questions about why we have studies and so on, you know, it's pretty much for the justification of expenditure of taxpayers' dollars. And I've been convinced that it's not prudent for us to make decisions on spending taxpayer dollars without proper research and input put into that. And so, yes, we're a bit slow in politics, but I do believe that it's the way that we should go. The Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, the director updated the group on the active transportation plan, the recreation needs assessment, green space development, primarily that's going to take place at the ravine, since the town now has the overseeing ability of the ravine. And the plan is to open from the bottom half, which has been closed ever since we had the big hurricane. And we looked at how that was going to be done, and using reconciliation as well, and keeping accessibility in mind so everybody can access the ravine. We also looked at and discussed the list of proposed capital projects. There are several research initiatives going on within our recreation department, so our people are involved in several initiatives ongoing at universities. Some of these include Dalhousie University and our Kentville Plays program. We're involved with them, Acadia University and our summer camp programming, and University of New Brunswick, and looking at municipal recreation and poverty reduction. Just a correction there, I do sit on the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition, and just a correction, earlier statement, the Trails Coalition made no recommendations as far as the active transportation route goes. One member made some comments, but it was not a coalition decision or coalition information. KCA PTA, we looked at walk and wheel days being held on May 22nd and June 18th. Those are days where our students either walk to school or they wheel themselves to school. And so those are coming up. This year's spring concert is planned for May 27th and 28th during the day, which is, I believe, a bit of a change. Planning for the gardens is almost complete, and they will be setting up the planting dates very soon. Order forms for the meat boxes fundraiser need to be back to the school by May 16th, and pickup will be between 4 and 6 p.m. on June the 3rd. And that is my report.
Excellent, thank you. So on to my report. So I think most of it has been covered off. I guess I'd like to talk about the second Michelin City Conference that I attended in Victoria, Spain. I have provided a report, and I tried to be as I guess, provide as much information as what I potentially could. The trip this year actually cost more than the first Michelin trip because of the way the funding was done in Spain, and it ended up costing the mayor's legislative account $1,995.28 for the entire trip. Anyway, it was an excellent conference, and one of the big things that we were talking about was sustainability towards urban development, and the things that we're talking about here in Kentville, Nova Scotia, are being done in most cities in Europe already, and it's actually quite incredible some of the things that they're doing, and the way that they're recovering land, particularly their brownfields. They're actually using plantings to, willow trees and sunflowers to change brownfields to, usable fields again. Now, this doesn't account for heavy metals, so if it's just oils and that sort of stuff, the willows and adding mulch to it, and the sunflowers actually for some reason or other, leaches out the oil out of the ground. So it's absolutely incredible. And I spoke to the man who did that presentation, and he said that he has colleagues over here in Canada, and he was going to give me that contact details. So it was absolutely incredible. The other thing as well is that another one of our keynote speakers was this Gill guy. I'm looking for his last name here as I speak, but he actually works in Canada, and he talks about, and this will be very familiar to all of you because you've heard Rachel talk about it, but the 8 to 80 city. And when you look at a space, look at it as to how an 8-year-old would use it and how an 80-year-old would use it. And if you can get both of those ends of the spectrum, then you know that your space is going to be usable by all people. And so it was absolutely wonderful. And, a lot of passion was presented with these presentations. I mean, one of the things that this Gill was talking about again was think, talk, and do. And I think that, I've heard it here from several of the councillors tonight, is that we have to do more of the doing. We tend to push it out to somebody else to think about stuff for us, and perhaps we already have what we need to start thinking, talking, and doing it. Another really interesting presentation we had were the presenters from each of the European green capital cities. The city of Oslo actually has encouraged green vehicles. So they're looking at only electric vehicles in their downtown area. Electric vehicles get free parking. They get free tolls on their bridges and everything. What Oslo figured out is that 60% of their greenhouse gas was caused because of car exhaust. So when you start looking at these things, it's absolutely incredible. The city of Victoria, what they did is they talked about a green tax, and it's not a tax that costs money, but what they said to people is, what are you willing to do? What is your contribution as a green tax to make our city more environmentally friendly? So one of the big challenges that they did was water usage. I mean, how many of us run the tap while we're brushing our teeth? So you think about these things, and if we reduce how much water we use, then we reduce the amount of chemicals that we have to put in it to produce good water, and then in turn, how much water we put into the sewer system. So it reduces our costs as a town. Mind you, we don't sell as much water, but if we don't have as much expense, it's really good. So on that whole expense side, the mayor from the city in Germany was talking about how they have done a whole bunch of solar and wind energy. Their city owns their utility, and their utility is not making as much money as what it used to because they're using this free energy, this wind energy, and this solar energy, and so it's reduced how much money they have to play with. So when you start talking about economy, you're trying to make these great decisions, but it's the unintended consequences that you also have to look at. So anyway, it was an excellent conference. They're making changes in 2021. The conference will be held in Mexico. In 2023, the Canadian contingent, so I'm going to say Kings County and Bridgewater, because they are the voting members of this, are looking at somehow getting this to Canada for 2023. So it's a great opportunity. I've provided some links to some websites in here, and some really just incredible, I know I keep saying that word, but incredible presentations. So I recommend that the town of Kentville continue to participate in this. And I've also made recommendations on some things that I think that we could consider for downtown Kentville. These really cool bike shelters. They look like a Quonset hut, but they would be probably 1/3 the size. And you get a code, and you punch in the code, you park your bike in there, and if it's an electric bike, you can plug it in because there's solar panels on top of this thing. It also has a little windmill on it so that you can can actually keep track of your bike using your cell phone. So they're really cool, but it would be one of those really kind of cool things that we could have downtown here. The other thing that I have to mention is in Europe, quality of life is one of the measures they use for quality of life is how much green space they have per citizen. So if you consider the town of Kentville and how much green space we have, and then assess that to our citizens, our quality of life number for that criteria would be very, very high. So anyway, I've given some recommendations. I put them out there. I would ask that you do take the time to read this report, and then perhaps at some time at one of our sit-downs we could talk further on that. Additionally, I have included my gifts for fiscal year 2018-2019. So during fiscal year 2018-2019, I have accepted $1,138.39 in gifts in the conduct of my duties. No single gift meets the criteria of a $250 threshold, and you'll see that most of the gifting actually occurs due to this Michelin City Conference, where 500 of it was my accommodations, 238 was my meals, and the rest of it is stuff that cups and things that I get in the mail, and tickets to events. So that's my report. So we have received all of the reports. If I could have a motion to accept the member reports as presented. Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the member council reports be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a piece of correspondence from Kelly Best in honor of her Kentville's late fire chief, Hiram Ilsley. It's dated April 11th, and I believe this is Hiram's granddaughter. I recall seeing the correspondence. My name is Kelly Ills Best. I'm the daughter of the late Fire Chief Hiram Ilsley. I grew up in Kentville, and as long as I can remember, my dad was involved in the fire department. It was his pride and joy, his daughter. Whenever the fire siren would go off, it wouldn't matter what he was doing. I mean, anything that he was doing, he dropped everything to answer the call. Well, I know that is not what being a volunteer is. Dad took it a whole new level. He made it his life. When he ran for deputy chief, he was so proud, but not as proud as his family. When he turned to chief, the smile never came off his face. Well, I like to think he mentored a lot of young firefighters in the fire service. Being the youngest of 6 children, I was the last to leave the home, so I grew up watching him go through the ranks of deputy chief to chief. Being chief was one of the proudest accomplishments. He dedicated his life to the fire department. He was a salesman for the Cody Food Equipment, selling commercial supplies to schools, restaurants, hospitals, and nursing homes. He traveled from Windsor to Yarmouth. He always would arrange his trips for out of town around the fire department, because if there was something going on at the station, he wanted to be there to help organize. Many calls came at home were from people in the area asking questions regarding burning, filling swimming pools, and along with many other things. One of the things that comes to mind for me is the Saturday night bingo games. He would be there almost every week serving hot dogs, and something I would get to go to and help him. He knew so many people. He was all about fundraising for the purchase of equipment for the department. He was an amazing father. He taught me so much. We used to go camping with a lot of the firefighters' families over the years, so even on vacation, there would be talk of the fire department. You could say fire service was a big part of our family too. He was the longest running chief in the fire department. He had 20 years plus as chief and over 40 years service. This was one of the hardest things for him to retire because it was a huge part of his life. He treated it as his full-time job. Everywhere we went, he knew someone, and if he didn't, he would ask about their relatives, and they would usually know one of them. I often wondered how he knew so many people, but I realized it was the fire department because being so involved in the town's fire service. As a young girl, I would go with my parents when they attended every Maritime Fire Chief Association conventions, in which every maritime province was in. I can only remember 2 times that he missed the conventions. Even after he retired as chief, he remained active in the community of president, chairman, and lots of the committees with the association. I have worked in the town of Kentville for most of my career, and I still work here now. As I look around the town and remembering how proud Dad was of it, I thought it would be nice if a street or something be named in his memory. It would keep his memory alive in Kentville. I miss my dad every day. Thank you for taking the time to read my letter. Kelly Best.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, moving on to our new business. So we have a request from the Kentville Historical Society for park space. Councillor Maxwell.
I'll make a motion that we give the Kentville Historical Society permission to go ahead and develop park space.
Did you get that? Can you repeat?
Yes, I make a motion that we give the Kentville Historical Society permission to develop the park space.
So it's been moved and seconded that council give the Kentville Historical Society permission to develop the park space. Is there any discussion? I see the lights coming on here. Councillor Ballin, please.
Thank you, Worship. I support the initiative, but my guts want to ask a few questions, and maybe it's through to the CAO, so I don't know if this has to go back to staff or back to the CAO, but are there any concerns on your end? Because we own the land and issues, the concept of closing off part of the driveway, et cetera, those dynamics. Should they be looked at, or do you have any concerns, or have you had a chance to review this? Or?
So, I mean, this has been in front of us for some time, but I haven't
Not
really...
in front of us,
nor has staff exerted much energy towards it, because we're really kind of waiting to see what kind of level of support council has, either in spirit or as this motion suggests. Things that we would think about would be the impact on traffic, the impact on infrastructure, the impact on parking. There's at least 3 parking spaces, I think, which would have been dedicated to the building. I don't know, I don't believe through my conversations there's any other impacts on parking within the parking lot, but there's at least 3 associated with the building. There's the public place and community destination consideration, social impacts, positive and potentially negative, and then its affiliation with the AT plan. But I think probably the key 3 most prominent would be the traffic flow and the infrastructure impacts and the parking. So I would suggest that we should take a look at those. I don't know that there's any immediate concerns, but certainly the infrastructure is a key one. I think the group has a general understanding, but we need to think about curbs and catch basins, and $40,000 is probably not too far off when we start moving these things around. There would also be at least a mild engineering component to it, especially with respect to the storm system. So from my point of view, it's not necessarily endorsement or concern. I think there's some assessment that is warranted. And then, of course, that's what we thought it was. We're prepared to move forward, or it's not what we thought it was, we need to reconsider. But I think there are some things that, through our due diligence, we need to take a look at and comment on. So I'm just going to put that out there. Yep.
So there's probably other lights, but I'll come back in a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. As I said before, I'm excited about the project. I think we're very fortunate to have someone with Carol's experience that's wants to help design it. But I think I would like to see, and stuff I never thought about when Mark said some of the infrastructure. I'd like to make sure that if there is going to be impact that's going to cost the town some money, whether it be moving a catch basin, something like that, that we should know. But also, the business side of me wants to see, like, is this what it's going to be? Because there was several more likely this. Okay, but I don't know. I don't want to say give it away, but before I okay, I'd really like to firm up what it's going to look like and what impact it's going to have, if any, on town infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you to the Kentville Historical Society. I think it's we have a great opportunity here with an initiative, a citizen initiative from a group in town, and I would hope. I think number one, I think we need to do our homework first. I think it would be negligent on our part to not. At the same time, I guess my hope would be that it didn't take long to. Let's do that homework and do it quickly, and I would hope be prepared by next council that if it goes forward, it's the right time of year for this kind of thing to go forward. At the same time, to rush it, I'm just not sure what the reason is to rush this particular project on a level.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. As CAO Phillips mentioned about the traffic and infrastructure and parking spaces, so those were some of my concerns, just to make sure that we do our due diligence and we look at those things. I think that's really important to do that before we make any decisions around the property. I agree with it in principle. I think it's a great concept. I also have to look at, this is the commercial banker that comes out in me, but I'm very hopeful that the Historical Society will do very, very well there in that building, and they'll stay there forever and a day. But if something happens that the Historical Society doesn't stay there, what would that mean for the building, and subdividing that building off in the event that we sold? Or I just sort of think about all those aspects of it. But I like the idea. I need to know more. I need to have more information around the items that were mentioned. And also the affiliation with the AT plan. That's a piece of it too. But to Councillor Maxwell's point, she mentioned about with the AT plan where there's the sidewalk or the walking part there and the bicycle lane, and so it wouldn't interfere with that piece. So maybe that's enough. I don't know, but and maybe Rachel's already looked at this. I'm not sure, but that's sort of where I'm at with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, I can understand looking at the infrastructure. I would have hoped that by now we knew this was coming, that would have been discussed prior to now. I'm thinking that 3 parking spaces is pretty minor, and that if the AT plan goes down that route, we will probably have to remove that entrance anyway. It would be a hazard to have people walking and biking right there and having cars turning in and out. So that is something that definitely would be a problem. There are already 2 other entrances into that space, so this makes a third into a very small parking lot. And as I expressed before, I do believe that entrance is used more as a cut-through for a lot of people just trying to beat the traffic coming out on Cornwallis Street across from the law courts. So, but I do agree about the infrastructure. I would like to see this. I think probably the rush is, to try and have it ready for the summer, and get work on it right away. And so I would like to maybe make an amendment to my motion, and I would amend it to say that we would support the Historical Society going ahead with this park pending review with staff.
I don't think that's a complete new motion. So we have to defeat the
Okay, we'll
first
defeat
motion?
it, and then I'll put another one in. I just wanted to add pending with staff. That would be an amendment.
Well, no, you've made two changes because you've taken the permission out, giving permission to them. So you've asked to support them and then do staff as well.
Okay, can I say permission?
It would be easier
Pending
to-
staff?
No, it would be
Support?
easier to defeat this motion
Yeah,
and then
okay.
make a new one.
Okay.
It would be cleaner.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
All right, so I have to go around the board and complete the people. Councillor Pulsifer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just think this is a really special opportunity for we as council and for the town to give, due diligence and consideration to this proposal. In the end, the town, even if the Historical Society should fail or close up shop, which I don't believe that will happen, but if it should happen, the town would be left with a urban green space that would be definitely an addition to the downtown core. We do suffer from lack of usable green space for seniors, for those that can't manage the Miners Marsh or can't manage the gorge or the ravine. I think we're one of the few towns that doesn't have a central core of sitting space, benches, and where you can gather. In relationship to the mention of 3 parking spaces, I believe those are quite minor. In the realm of things, we were considering a loss of quite a few parking spaces back earlier last year with the ATV route there for the Webster Street. I mean, the town would receive this space usable from age 8 to 80 at no cost, other than perhaps some of the maneuvers of the basin, catch basin or whatever, Public Works. But it comes from, it does come from the engagement of citizens and possibly the horticultural department and SCC, which we like to involve in our activities. And it would also be a partnership with an enthusiastic non-profit group. And the project comes with an experienced landscape designer. So I would suggest that we should look at this sooner than later and make a decision so that this year we can get something going if council can, agree with that. It's kind of like a gift horse. It's presenting us, someone is presenting us with something that is not going to be $40,000 out of the town's coffers, and I just think it's a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, indeed, this is a great opportunity, and I don't want us to lose the momentum and energy of our volunteers. I would like us to revisit Councillor Maxwell's motion and defeat that. I think it needs to go back to staff just so we have that comfort feeling on the logistics side of it. I'm not concerned about parking spaces with the County of Kings leaving the town within months. There's going to be a lot of parking spaces there. I don't want this project also to be held up by an AT study that might go into the latter part of this year. I would like us to have staff bring something back to us in 30 days by the May council meeting. It'd be wicked if these volunteers threw their hands up and said, heck with it, and they don't have the energy and the time to commit to it. So the ball's in our court here, and I think if we had a report back in 30 days to give us a comfort level, I think that would be very, very doable. Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I just had a question, because when we're talking about green space here, I just wondered if there was any update on the land adjacent to the King's Arms pub, because I believe Lindsay had talked about some grants that were applied for that, and I think the concept of that is it's quite different than what this concept is, right? No, sorry, I shouldn't say right. Is it correct?
I think probably by definition, they're both public green spaces.
Right.
I think the property you're talking about next to King's Arms is intended for similar, to sit if you want to, but there's also an opportunity for, I think, play space. I don't know that the rec department would have put a play box in there, but
Okay.
there's that kind of concept. It's not a big chunk of land either, but I think the
Right.
two would be complementary.
Sure.
But
Okay.
potentially slightly different. I'm not sure if you plan on displaying historic artifacts as well. I know you have cornerstones and things like that that we've been collecting, so there's probably a little bit of a historic element perhaps that the other one doesn't have. But.
Just one more question, if I could. How much land do we have there?
Sorry, over by the historical
Yep.
site. Just by recollection,
I'm
well, we
assuming
own
it's
the
all.
entire parking lot. We own the entire parking lot. I just can't recall if the building is on a separate parcel or not. I could look that up on my phone.
Can you just page down so I can see that first picture
Yep.
that Carol had of the parking lot?
The
Up, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, up more.
up,
The original.
Yep, that
Yeah.
one.
right.
Okay.
So I think the whole lot is ours.
Like right back to the posts?
Right up to Cyril's, what you would call Cyril's front door. So I can check here.
Really?
but go ahead.
I can answer the question. The town has what's laid out as the street where the building is and the parking lot.
Okay.
That's the town's land.
All of it? Okay. Thank you.
There you go. We'll trust the solicitor. I won't look it up. Yeah.
Okay, so we've heard from everybody. I guess I would like to add my 2 cents worth to it and repeat much of what's already been said. This is an amazing opportunity, particularly the partnership with NSCC and Carol's talents. I don't think just the cost of that alone, when you consider it. But having said that, I don't think that we can go into anything without looking at this. I mean, when you look at that space, there's a storm drain right there. There's curbing. There's asphalt that has to come up. Getting rid of that in and out so that you're not on death's door every time you try and cross that space would be completely amazing. But at the same time, I don't think that we can do this in isolation. I truly think that we have to look at our AT plan and say, maybe we're not going to implement the AT plan, but whatever we do here should be complementary, such that when we do decide to do the AT part, if we were going to do it, that it could be hooked on, so that we're not throwing good money after more good money. The other thing is securing the property as ours. If you look at what we've just gone through with the curling club, they wanted basically 2 feet off of their front doorstep to make their space accessible, and it's costing at least $5,000 and probably up to $10,000 to do that. So I can't imagine that $40,000 is even going to get us that pavement ripped up and the storm drainage in the right place. So my concern, as our banker has said, is what happens if the building was ultimately sold. Does that mean that green space goes away, and does it become annexed, and does it become a private park where there's certain people that aren't allowed to sit on benches because they're not the kind of people that we want sitting on our benches? And I guess I worry about those things. So I'd like to think that this was going to be a legacy piece for the town of Kentville, and that it would be a legacy piece for all of the people of Kentville who are looking for that respite space. And again, if we measure quality of life by how much green space there is, that guy, he's got it right. Sitting there with his leg up and not a care in the world, and all of those flowers in our downtown, it just makes sense. But I really think that this has to be something that is put to paper with staff and our design expert before we make any decisions. We are embarking on budget deliberations in the coming weeks. We know that this is not in our budget right now. The fact that they're saying they can fundraise this, they're still going to need seed money to get started, and there's still a cost to the town, because it is our human resources that will be assisting with the engineering portions of this. So I really think that we need to look at this long and hard and decide how much it's truly going to cost before we move forward and give permission to start ripping up pavement. So we have a motion that has been moved and seconded to give the Kentville Historical Society permission to develop the park space. Are you ready for the question? The voting is now open. So the motion right now is that we give the Kentville Historical Society permission to develop the park space. So Councillor Maxwell wanted to amend that, but the amendment was actually creating a new motion, so she asked to defeat it. So that's a no, a red. Motion closed. All right. So the motion is carried. The motion is defeated, or the motion is defeated. Sorry. So the motion is defeated. There were two yeses, Councillor Pulsifer and Andrew. That's okay. It was defeated. It did not affect the outcome. Councillor Maxwell.
Okay, let's
go again.
try this motion, that council give our support to the Kentville Historical Society to develop the green space park pending consultation with staff.
Should we direct staff first in a motion?
Well, it implies that staff is doing something. You can do what you like. I would suggest you might consider that you're supporting it in principle.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And
Okay.
that you're asking for a collaboration of information to come back to council to influence your decision through staff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's,
I'm just wondering if I can summarize. What I think I just heard was
Okay.
send it to staff for a report to report back at CAC.
Yes. Councillor Maxwell?
I just want to speed up the process. I want to somehow speed up the
support.
process.
I think
That we
it's your
want to
intent.
show our support,
Yeah, it's your intent
and then
to
goes
support.
to staff, and you guys work it out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we need to come back here, I guess we need to come back here, but,
No, it's got to come back here.
okay, in 1 month.
So maybe we could try something like,
Okay.
support this request in principle, and that staff and members of the Kentville Historical Society work together to produce a report back to council with project details, something like that. And I don't think you need to capture in the motion, but we'll investigate the things that I had mentioned and a few other things traffic, parking, infrastructure, beautification, social impacts, AT, that kind of stuff. So we kind of have this collaborative thing that comes back and says, here's what we think. Obviously funding and longevity and maintenance and all that kind of stuff we would talk about as well.
Can we put a time frame on it?
So I tried to capture what you've
Okay.
both said. So support the Kentville Historical Society initiative in principle and collaborate with staff to provide a report to council within 30 days.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so,
Support the society project in principle.
yes,
And that
the Kentville Historical Society and staff collaborate to provide a report to council within 30 days.
Can you read that back?
Please do.
That council support the Kentville Historical Society project in principle, and that staff and members of the society, town staff, and members of the society collaborate to provide a report to council within 30 days.
And you move that?
I move that.
Kathy? Thank you. Eric? Thank you. So we have a motion that has been moved and seconded to support the Kentville Historical Society initiative in principle and for collaboration with staff to provide a report to council within 30 days. Is there any, I've got all kinds of lights here. I'm going to hit clear, and then if you still want to talk.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with the motion. My only concern is around the time frame, the 30 days. I just know that this is an exceptionally busy time of year for staff coming into the spring. What if they can't get it done in 30 days? Then what does that mean? If I just know it's what's that? Okay. Yep, that's fine.
And I just love you people. And I would like to thank you for giving me a chance to work with staff because I've been itching for 3 years. And that's all I have to say.
My name's Seamus McLaren. I live at 14 Park Street. And about the park at the train station there, my main concern was that Maritime bus be able to continue to stop there. And I don't think that there is any problem with that. But that would be what I would be concerned about, because that is an important link with the rest of the province. And I'd like also to see Maritime bus be able to stop there twice a day rather than once, and you'd maybe have an agent there. I also wanted to mention about Eves Hollow, where the ravine had come up, because I know that there was I passed through there last night, so I know that there was a biking accident there with 2 children. And Eves Hollow is a dangerous spot, especially where the road passes through on the border with New Minas, where the tidal brook comes in there, and it links the main road with the bike path and so on. So yeah, that is an area that eventually, probably something should be looked at to make sure the way that the curbs are and the way, I'm not sure what happened in that accident, but I think it might have been where there's sort of a shortcut where you're coming off of the road coming down from Kentville going into the bike path, and it looks like I've had that problem myself. I also had an accident in Eves Hollow on a bike, and it looks like you can curve there, but there's actually steps. I think that might have been what happened with that accident, but I'm not sure. In my case, the accident was where I ran into a curb going into the hollow, like into the ravine, and the grass was so high I couldn't see that there was a curb there, and I ran into it with my bike. So there are some things to look at as far as safety and accessibility to enter the ravine park from Eves Hollow, and because it's a naturally dangerous place, which is why it's the border between Kentville and New Minas.
Danger.
Well, yeah, you do. You think of danger when you think of Eves Hollow. You think that's a dangerous spot, and you do have to think when you're running through there on a bike. You have to think caution as you approach going down that hill, whatever side it is. On one side, Kentville has the sidewalk on one side. New Minas has the sidewalk on the other. So it's also something that it would be best to work with New Minas in a project of improving the safety and accessibility of Eves Hollow and the Ravine Park and the bike path there. Now, the other thing I thought I would mention is I had spoken with Beverly Gentleman, I think about 6 weeks ago, about an idea I had, knowing that there's land that can be developed for residentially between Prospect Avenue and the Gorges Park, right? And I think I spoke with her about that, and she said that it's sort of a low-density zoning, and it would be more attractive to the developer if it were higher density. But I think it would also be better for the town if it's higher density, because that's such an ideal place to live, where it is close to the school, it's close to the downtown, it's close to where the Maritime bus comes, it's close to the biking and the local bus routes. So it's a very ideal place to live, and to have a higher density zoning, changing the density, the zoning to higher density might be a way to encourage. She said there are 2 developers that own that land, along with, I think the town owns a little bit of it too, but mostly there's 2 developers owning it, and changing the zoning to higher density would probably be the best way to encourage them to build something. But I haven't heard anything back from her, and I'm not sure what the best way to where I'm not the developer, I'm just a resident that would like to see higher density, medium range development in that area, where it is a very good place to live on the area there, Spring Garden Road, School Street, those roads there.
Now, as a council, we can't just rezone somebody's land, but as a council, we can be supportive to developers who come to us looking, as you suggest, to change their zoning. So I think that's our role, is the support to that. But we can't just like you couldn't go into the office and change the zoning of somebody's land.
Yes.
They have to do that process.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's on privately owned land. They have to start the process.
They have to initiate that
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Yep.
But thank you for your ideas.
Hopefully they will.
Well, maybe they hear you.
That is a good place to develop.
All right. Well, thank you. Is there any further business?
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Woo-hoo, look at that. No. Yeah, I know.